So there are no one source for this class. You really just trust the documentation pages. Your most super important screen is Facebook React, right? React Native docs page. Any component in there, you definitely have to go there and copy and paste some of the Bootstrap code over, because React Native, what's that, Visual Studio Code doesn't really do it for you. You know, handling the change event, you don't know what event name to use, and list view, for example, right? How do you set up the list view? There's a diffing method. Now, beside that, now you also have to bookmark this as your home place to read. Mainly Stack Navigator and Tab Navigator. For tab for Android is the 2 tab at the top, I believe, and then iOS is 2 tab at the bottom. And how you combine them when you use it in an app. And to do that, you really need to understand this navigator arguments being passed around. So you can get this navigate object, which is a function. Function is also an object, right? Like from out of this whole, you get the navigate property in here, and then it's a function itself that you call, and then you can pass extra params. Once you understand this, even if you work with Redux and you pass things around, you know how to keep this navigation object here. And then inside there is to show the screen to. So what's that screen to? We know that inside state navigation object, beside the navigate function, you also have the state object, and in that state you have params, right? And the extra params. So this stack navigator has router built in. A lot of things don't, and it's a bit more awkward. Like the classic one, you have to do more steps. The third place for you to look at is, I will link to this naming convention. Once you go to, we'll have components and reducer, we'll go back to this. But next is this Redux homepage. We're going from React Native to React Native Redux. So it's like 3 steps here. First, what is Redux? Redux is just a way to do data flow, and you don't deal with it directly, but it's important to understand. There are 3 things: action, store, and reducers. And you can combine reducers together. And the idea is Redux define a one direction data flow, and in an action, in each flow, right? And whenever you flow, sort of, this is the something running repeat and just checking the action. And it's important to know what type of action. So it's like the name for the action. The convention is to use the capital letters underscore like this. So you do type and then any extra attributes you put in the action object. This is an action object. And we write code later. You don't want to write hard-coded string in here, right? You actually might move this to a separate thing. Maybe you call it action types. And in here you have action types dot like article, and you can actually run checker. It will detect that you use the wrong variable name if you have a typo. So all this hard-coded constant string is just here for concept. So if you have action like this, like you can pass around extra information, like what article, what row are you updating, right? It's one directional. So when you want to change something, you call this batch. There's one flow, right? There's something over there is going to receive, and if it can receive, it has to subscribe first. So at home, if we would start coding this stuff, but I encourage you to not be afraid to just go to Redux, and very quickly, only 3 places you can have to read here. Understand that data flow, start calling things as action, and then next, how do we use it with React? So for components, React Native is everything about components. And the cool thing is now you can actually go to GitHub or Google, just Google like login button, Google login button, Facebook login button. Everything is already a component. Unlike, normally you have to set all these things up. It's a component, and you pass in the props, and you're done. You have a working login screen. It's crazy, right? So that's beautiful. But when we work with component, we need to know the two types. One is presentational components, and the other one is container component. View is which type? It's kind of weird. View, you could set background, you can present an image there, but a lot of times you could also use it as container component. Just normal class, right? Every time you do home screen class, or then it's all container component use. And this is what we use the container components to use with Redux and React, right? Presentational components inside, you can read data from props. You can pass, when you dispatch, the parents can, is it the parents? No, when the parents can dispatch in your update, and then the children, they notice that the props change. There's some subscription mechanism in the update. So that's all we need to know when you want to get down to the concept. So I'm going to try to learn that with you in this app right here.
Can you explain why we're talking Redux? Why it's useful?
Oh yeah, so I ended the first part with saying if we use only Navigator, I would draw it like a tree. Unfortunately, I couldn't find Bao's lecture. It's like a tree where you go from the root component, going to the one on the left and then one on the right, and then it's like down the left, let's say node A, go down to A1, A2, and then when you want to go from A2 to, let's say, down here on the right hand side, you have the tree node B and B1, B2. What happens when you navigate around? It's like you pass back to the props and the state. So what if you have this thing it's like a global variable thing, except that it's not variable, it's function. It's a store. And then at any node you can dispatch to the store. And the store takes care of some of this convention. Any of the component you do, you connect with the store, so we'll receive update. I think it can get pretty messy still, right? It's like global variable, but slightly better because it's unidirectional and it's function. So we'll try to understand that. I think this is one of the hardest things, even when I try to make sense of it. I tried a few times.
So is this required?
For React Native apps?
Yes.
I think ultimately it's still one of the most conventional way. When you, in this class, when you do homework, do the low-level thing. Make this mistake that I made, right, and getting these errors. When you finish first 4 weeks, you run into your final project, you may actually use some template to start your app. And any React Native template you use, you actually install React Redux, and all in there. That's why it's pretty much Redux become very much tied into React Native. But there are other mechanisms. What are some other names that you? Right, I think So technically there was Flux before this, right? Facebook came up with Flux, and then there's another guy who wrote wrote Redux on the train ride, and then it became popular. And he used the same principles. It's just he made things simpler. The problem is it's too simple, all this action thing. And if to really use React Redux, you need a few more. Like this, you need Redux Saga to deal with fetching remote data. You Thunk, and there's too many components that it's actually beyond my knowledge right now.
If I just add my 2 cents, so the reason why Redux is useful, as you see here, we have things like this.setState. That's very useful, and you don't need any more complexity to handle one component. But if one component needs to talk to another component, it gets very complicated very quickly. So
right.
Redux is a good way for multiple components to talk to each other. And about React Native, one good thing is you can kind of plug and play different components. So you can use other people's components, or people can use your components. But if there's not a standard way that they talk to each other, it's very difficult to reuse code. And it's also very difficult to understand where code's coming from. So in this case, if this text input box needs to be submitted to a different component somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a uniform way for those things to talk to each other, it's very possible to track if you're just using this .set state everywhere.
Right.
So
it's
Redux is like an application architecture. So your whole application will follow this one way of passing data from one component to another component.
Is that a little clearer?
Next week, maybe we can have a few quick slides. So there's a lot of diagrams you'll see online.
Yep. And
It's like you want to upload up.
I'm surprised they don't have the diagram in here.
Yeah, these guys don't have
So one way for me to verbally explain the diagram is to do the tree, node A, B, C, D, and talk to each other. I mentioned the Google component, a login component, Facebook login component. It's the super simple way where you have a component, you put in the key to client key, and you can now start logging in. But like Charles said, some of them fancier component that needs to tie in with the whole app. Now that I really believe that it's just one way to do things. There are a lot of cons with some of the the Redux way as well, but we don't have to get into that.
If you've done web apps, I think everyone here knows MVC framework. It's the model view controller. That's like Redux in that. That's just the way that you can structure your application. And it works for many cases, but it's not the only way to do it. Do you have like a Slack?
A slide.
Slack or something, or can you just go to EU.
I don't have Slack open. Do you want to type here?
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry. I think the diagram really helps. That's how I learned it.
Well, I was gonna do live coding, but
just 1 second. So this is, well, I'll paste this in Slack for you guys, but this is kind of this is the diagram that Harley's kind of mentioning. How do I drag this? Make it to the side.
all right.
Does this make sense to you? It might be more confusing, but we'll paste this in Slack. You can read up this documentation. This is my favorite explanation how this works. But the couple of words he just said, actions, you'll see there. And that's the little code snippet that you just saw from Harley's, that little blue circle. It's going that way. It goes to the store. Everything in the yellow stuff is for your whole application.
Can we have multiple stores?
You can have multiple stores, but not really.
So they're
one store. You can split little pieces.
Right.
Your whole application has one place where it keeps all its data.
Yeah, this is then it's up to your decision as well. And then it gets crazy when I look at some existing React Native app with multiple stores, because you have app folder and then stores folder, reducer folders, and stuff. And then I can get pretty crazy looking at that. If I have a project that I work on recently that provide a way to, this is a chat app that we actually use Redux. And the cool way about Redux is you make it very clear to know what state it is, to define, I don't know, I hope this is useful. So I can just say, I want to find a product, and the chatbot will just start talking to me. But to debug this, to work with between front end and back end, I work entirely on the front end, back end. So with the front end guy, I can debug by basically looking at any action that it's doing, that you see its user message and then an action type. And then I look at the next state. And in the state, then you have the variables. And you can look at the chat messages. But the previous state is like 10 messages, and the next state is 11 messages. They store them separately. So that's unidirectional. You never modify the original data there. So I think they've built such amazing tool to display on the console. As you build React Native on, you might have the React Dev tools you could use. But for front-end web development with just React.js, this is the common way where you can display all these objects and you can inspect them.
So this is really cool because here you see this, it's saying the state, but everything in each print statement, that's all the data you need to figure out everything in your program. So you don't have anything else. So this is functional programming, so you're taking input data and outputting the results. So it's really easy to debug this. So if you're wondering why doesn't this button show up, or why is this button red instead of green, all your answers are in one place, which is why I said your application has just one store. That's where all your data is, and that helps all your components talk to each other.
Yeah. My main problem with this kind of design is that the data is made to be very simple, but the code, you end up with so many files. It's insane, right? With the React app, but we'll get into that. Okay, so let's try building something that is like the React, with the React architecture. I convert, and the way I store, it's a bit, convert the way I store the variables here to use Redux. And I lost my flow here. Okay. First, let's add Redux. And how do you add it? Let me just go back to here. What we did this time here. I'm assuming all of you are good in Git now. Just like simple dash. And yarn add Redux. And what? React. Redux. Is there a React Native Redux as well? Is there one? No, right? Just okay. So the idea is action, reducers, and store. I think I tried like 10 different ways to learn this, and it was confusing. So let's see if you only need 5 to learn this 5 times. So what do we need to import to create? What's the easiest thing to think between the 3 components? The problem is we have to understand all 3 of them. So for Redux only, Redux architecture, we have something called a store, an action, and a reducer. Back into this program, this diagram again, you need to reference to that. The 3 green things, right? The dispatcher and state and props syncing is extra. So we have to think of everything as function, like Charles said. And here, a store, what is the, I'll just take an action. We already know an action has a type. So I'm gonna do one thing, maybe I will upcase, I'll just upcase my username, go to the next screen. I'm trying to be polite to Charles and display it. So one way is to say you use upcase here. And I mentioned there's a possibility of mistyping, so some people have this convention. All these possible maybe action types. And then in here you have, upcase. I don't know if it's their what convention is. So all the, see, it's so easy to type it wrong there. And instead of doing upcase like that, you just do action type dot upcase. Okay? So it's like this autocomplete thing, the logic up there, all the actions are in one place. So that's an action. What is a reducer? There's one thing that we also need, but it's not from Redux, which is state. The state is in React itself. And we have this stuff, state stuff. But so a state is like everything about the app. I think what Charles has said about. I have this state that just, next state, it contains everything that's needed. Right? No need to store, everything is loaded there. And it's just between function, I present the logic of the app differently. So I have a state, it's an object. It could be, my state is like username here, Harley. And then I'm going to create an action that take from Harley undercase, lowercase to Harley uppercase. So that's what it's called. So we have that action, and we have a reducer. Reducer is, you take something, you reduce, just mapping it to the next state, right? Combining stuff. So a reducer is a function that take a state and an action, and then you return, what's the return type? Anyone help me out? That's right. It's a state, the next state. One of the craziest thing about this kind of architecture is that you can always go back to the past. You can rewind it. So imagine if you play Flappy Bird and you fail, you can actually have a hack that like go back how many steps and then play it again. Imagine in a lot of other apps, if you just code it, go to the next one, you just update the position, just overwrite the variables. There's no way you can go back. With Redux architecture, you can. So with that, I'm going to I call this upcase reducer. Would that be okay? Upcase reducer. Let's just make it a function. Everything is constant until you really need to. Upcase reducer it takes like that, and it will return a new state. Yeah. So a new state here, maybe I know that here's something that we also need to use. Let's say if I just pass that, everything stays the same. Please do not do state.username is state.username to uppercase. I don't know, to uppercase, something like that. What's wrong with this? Right, and it's very easy to make this mistake with hash and array. No, not hash, sorry, object and array. So be careful with that. But putting the logic of changing this in here is not good. We have something called action, right? So technically, I am returning something that is like, it comes from the action here. I have to modify the state based on the action. So I need to have an if statement. If action.type is, maybe action types, dot upcase, then I return this. Otherwise, maybe I just return the current state. I don't know what to do with, other types yet. How does that sound? Does it look okay? Anyone want to make some changes? What if besides username I have something else like age and chat history and stuff? What to do then? I only modify one thing, yeah? Oh, you must return an array? Well, we return a state. We just modify one thing in the state, but this is super important. We're not going to do state dot, this dot set state. We're not doing state dot username and then give it a new value. Even just now I say state dot username equals something else. That's state has not been changed. It's just something inside is changed. That's still not good. You want to keep the state. So what's normal is you use a spread operator, right? Does that work? And then it will take this and it can actually override the username inside the state. So the spread operator is a must. If you using JavaScript and some of you is new, then learn it for both the array operator and the array and the object. Okay, so I have this upcase reducer. It looks fine. And then my action, it's just that. Okay, what else is missing? A store. Okay, so we only have one store, like Charles said. All right, const global store or something. I just call it store. And then we have to use a function called create store. What does create store take? Let's think about it if we design it. What does it take? It will take a bunch of reducers. That's good call there. So take a bunch of reducer and you can combine reducers together. In this case, I just have one reducer. I'm just gonna call it upcase reducer. So it's funny. I should not know about store after I know my reducer. So move it down here. You can actually also pass in initial state. So now you have a few things ready for this physics engine. I have the initial store and then things can just run, right? I connect them together. So my initial state, I can just put it empty, or maybe I just say username is Charles, so I can use it, right? So maybe I can even do, age is 21. What is wrong with this dot there? Okay. So what else is missing? I need create store. So let's make it work. Import create store from Redux. Okay. And when I make changes, well, I need to set and save. There's one more concept to do is when to get back the store, I can do store.getState. Inside store, there's a state. Okay, and getState, obviously, this function is available because I create store return me an object that has that getState function. So if I just try to run it right now, what's wrong with this guy right here? Maybe my actions, I don't know, my actions. Okay, home screen. I have too many draft code. My state. Line 12. Okay. So if it's this one more thing when I handle the change here, instead of doing this dot get state, I have to update the store, right? And unfortunately for a component, when we talk about the store has to lie outside the component, isn't it? So I can't do home screen and I have the store in here. So ideally, I will down here, there's in this home screen, I will pass in the store. Right, but I'm not going to go there yet. I just explained. Let's say here I can get the store. So in this constructor, I'm going to create this dot store. This is only temporary. Really doing one step at a time. So this dot store is set to be that global store. Okay. And when you handle changes, this is your store doing the work now. I say dispatch. What am I dispatching? An action. So what is that action called? So you can obviously hard code like this, but maybe that's not a good idea, right? So this is action types of my actions. So I have my action, okay, my action, and then the first action is this. So I may have multiple actions, but for now it's like, okay, this is my action down there. I dispatch. So let's say if I save anything, it also dispatches to my store. How do I know that? I will need to maybe try to show it somewhere. So let's print out store. Here will be console.log store is store. And right, so in this store we're not afraid, we're looking inside here. There's a store object, we have a dispatch function, subscribe function, get state function. That's mostly what you deal with. Okay? And then if you set this as a global variable store, then you can even do store.getState and you can actually show it. But right now it's a function here, so I can't run it. So you can lay here. So store.getState. And then whoops, let's change it. It's changing where oh, here, username here, right? Why is username an object? It's supposed to be a string, right? Type, I think I'm doing something wrong. I'm returning the actions. I'm not, yeah, obviously. No one helped me just now. Now here, I need to do something about that, right? This action. So you can include some extra things here, right? Like maybe name of in some cases like user ID or some extra stuff. But here, I'm just gonna map from a what's a JavaScript function to taking username. So user dot to upper case. Ah, thank God. It's almost so username. Hey, how do I get the username? State dot username, but two uppercase. Let's just double check, okay? A dot two uppercase, and then let's check A again. That is creating a new string. It's important to not use something that is destructive. So state.username.to uppercase. Is it like that? And you see how I maintain the H stuff. So let's try again. All right. Whoops. That's not good. Who knows this one? I actually uppercase it, but it's not working. Dispatch sort of. I think this. Do you have to subscribe for this to make the whole round trip? Now, at least we understand the idea, right? I think that this is everything we need. This is the state. You can debug it, print it to screen when stuff doesn't work with store. What I want to do next is, obviously, we need to update. What's that? Passing state. All right. What I'm going to do next is using Redux with React. Huh? Correct. And so that we don't have to do subscribe stuff. There's no need to learn that, but so we are going to connect, and this is something that is a bit crazy because we use a navigator. The idea of using a store, a global store, is that we need we use what Redux calls us. We just learned Redux architecture, right? So this is Redux architecture. You need a provider. And a provider, you pass in a store. Let me try to find a place where I can explain it before diving into code. So, Redux. Okay. We just saw how I call dispatch, and then you kind of need subscribe, and to hook it up into the rendering. You hook it when the component mount, you subscribe it, and then so when you dispatch, right, it will update the store state. Okay. But we have Redux API, React Redux API, and only two things. The goal right now is to talk about what provider is and what connect does, which looks really funny if you're new to JavaScript. So provider is a container component. It's not doing anything, presenting, right? And you only need to just set it, generally just use it, right? You have a root component, now you put a root component inside the provider component. What it does is just handling the store to all their container components. But the connect thing is, it's just take the store, any component you connect to me, now I'm the store, I will just give you state in your props. What is props and what is state? Props are things that pass down by the parents and they cannot be changed. State are internal sort of variables, values, internal state of a component. You can change things around with it. Ideally, you can even write better programs by using things with no state. It's very cool. So here we're going to expose, this is the tricky part, that I'm not sure if we are going to figure it out in class. I need to wrap. If I don't use provider, if I don't use app navigator, it's really easy. But because if I have this home screen here, then we're running out of time. It's really easy, right? But if it's app navigator, the problem is navigator is passing it navigation. And it's stubborn. It doesn't know about this store thing. You have to hook them up together. In a lot of apps, you probably do it together. So we have it's not hard. Just use the where's the React navigation stuff here? Advanced guides. What you need to do is to convert the app navigator stuff, and you have to pass both. You have to pass the nav prop and the dispatch prop using the syntax. So you just have extra variables like this. Let's just do it together here. And although it will not be very clear what's going on. So I'm going to move all the store stuff to outside, let's say store here, right? All the way down to initial state and all the store things. Save it, take it out. I will move it out to this app.js. Now you will start moving actions to the actions folder. Reducer, you may have more in the reducer folder. And then the naming convention for reducer and action is more like this, myaction.js. So only the component ones you capitalize. And let's integrate with this app navigator. We need something like this. Provider store with store. So I have that down here. Provider, it doesn't understand what it is. And provider is inside import provider from React Redux. We did yarn add Redux and yarn add React Redux. And I'm just going to solve the errors as we go. What's going on with this one? Semicolon and that. Is it enough? Nope. Works. Alright, store is not defined. It's in the other home screen. I don't need the store thing yet. Let's just remove it. I'll just print store again after we finish this setup successfully. And things work, except my store is now not yet doing what I want. That's the first step. Have the store connect. But it will not play well with the navigator. So let's really follow the advanced setup. In some app, if it's simple, you don't have to use both. To be honest, I think homework 2, you just use stack navigator and it just works. But let's just try to do both. And I have a store here. So app with navigator tree state. So I need to create that component. What is this component? Well, we just stack one component on top of another. It connect that. We need to use connect. I'll explain this. So there's a function here. So I'm just going to map. Most of the time in the map props to state. Most of the time we use that function. Oh, my bad. Map with map state to props. The idea is the state inside the component here, it will go into props of the children, right? So, and then the second thing here is the second argument. So connect is a function that takes a function as an argument that returns another function, and that function will take a module as an argument. Okay? So when we run this, what happens? Undefined right? And then of course we need connect. So talk about React Redux API. Only two things are needed here for now: product, provider, and connect. And then it will complain that we don't have map. So let's define that. And a lot of time, again, it's const because it's just a constant function from state to props. And here I need to return some props. And probably, why not? I just return the same thing. I clone this state into another object. Does it look okay? Uh-oh, I'm like trying to do both. All right, and you see, it converts back to single argument. You must pass the component to the function. Obviously, my app thing here is not correct, so I need an actual component, right? And I can't call this app anymore, so I'll call this maybe root to really follow along. And to use it out here, I need to call it root. I'm sorry. Whoops, I'm sorry. Okay, this is fine because we export default, so I don't need to change this. But note that this is root renamed to app, okay? So in here, we have root and export default root. It will become app in index.app. All right, great. So this app is not defined. This app is, what is this app? It's the app navigator that we just built. Okay, so the tricky thing is this app navigator. I now need this app navigation. Now app with navigation state here. That's it, down there. And then in this app, we call it app navigator. One step at a time. It will run, but my state is not properly, it doesn't get properly dispatched. Because when you dispatch through this stack navigation, it doesn't work. So that's because it has its own dispatch thing. So I need to do one more thing. It provides this only for this purpose. You have to transform this app navigator into a new app navigator. So I'm going to call it app. Okay. I don't know why this can't just be why do you need this? It can't just be this const. It's a standard function, right? You don't need this extend, but it's easier to follow if we just do this, I guess. So let's copy this app thing here. Look, this is the first time I copy and paste because I'm running out of time. So class app, React component, app navigator, I have it up there. And I know a navigator instance, this class, it has a navigation, right? Property, right? A navigation prop. What it's doing here is it's returning, it's copying the navigation object and then it add extra stuff to it. So we don't have to do the spread operator ourselves. So add navigation helpers. This will crash because we need to import it. So we need to import it from here. Add navigation helper. Right? So, and then I say, hey, app navigator props.dispatch. Where is this props.dispatch from? It's from here. When you do connect, and the final argument is this module, you get an extra thing called dispatch, and it's a function. And it's also an extra thing called state. Well, any module, it has a state in it, but so this is the part that I probably won't be able to explain well. It's asking us to convert the nav property prop into the state. So let me just let us just inspect what it is. I follow the what we know is just dispatch, right? We're connecting those dispatch and connect together. Or revisit this to really understand that. I save it. Okay, good. And why do I have all this extra thing, right? Let's look at the state they have. I have my own state. Just now I defined, so I want to reuse that. So they have this nav reducer. They create a new nav reducer. What's the purpose? To pass the nav. You're using this store now. You're not using the stack navigator navigation way. So adding this nav reducer, and this is the nav property that we just talked about. This dot state dot navs. Nav is a nav reducer, and in that nav reducer, it gets the current state of the navigator. Okay, let me. Obviously, if that makes sense, then you're a genius. App Navigator uses its own thing called router. But the advanced way that we're setting up here, unfortunately, if you use both are the mainstream way now. Last time we taught React, we did not use this because it's a more complicated Redux. So to handle your app navigation state in Redux, right? We now must provide the state and dispatcher, and now we let store take care of connect and dispatch. And that's why we actually say, hey, I know you have a router, use smart, but I'm going to use store. And I say navigator dot router get state for action just because it's tied into the store. So unfortunately, all we know is this nav reducer is the next state. That's why it's it's returning. Like initially you have no next state, so you have a state. A nav reducer will just check the app navigator. Hey, remember the navigation property? Navigation dot state is getting it out here. Get state for that action and combine. So I have to use combine reducer. If I could use it successfully, we'll be able to see the state that I printed just now and successfully down here, that the whole object. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I do need help. Charles, are you able to explain combine reducers?
Yes.
Where is it? That's the only missing piece right here.
Yeah, so here, remember the other function that we said if action.type equals like upcase? So imagine if you only had one reducer for your entire application, you'd have like a switch statement that's really, really long, or many if statements. That's inconvenient. If you think about how your app works, the nav part usually does only need to know nav. So nav is considered nav. Maybe we have different screens, so like sign up, we only care about sign up, or user, or actually probably it's more like user or shopping cart. You want to separate this logic into different functions, so you don't have just one long function. That's impossible. So you can say combine reducers, and all that does, it just gives you a namespace. So all your nav logic can be under a function called nav reducer. All your like shopping cart logic can be under shopping cart reducer. It's just convenience to help organize your things.
Then is there an order how reducers are run?
There's no. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what order they run.
So
but you shouldn't have the same. You shouldn't have multiple reducers that act on the same objects.
Gotcha. So we have, let's say, right now upcase reducer. Obviously, you don't want this reducer to handle too much logic. Only for this upcase.
If you go back to your example, actually the chat example, you'll see it.
Here.
The Google chat.
Uh-huh.
So this is a combined reducer. So you have an auth reducer, you have a chat reducer, you have a global reducer, and a route reducer. So in this example, the route reducer is the same thing as nav. So that keeps track of where you're navigating. And then chat is your chat logic, and your auth is your user, things like that.
Right. Chat reducer, auth reducer, and the global thing is if you're really lazy, I guess.
Yeah, something like this. I mean, this is the store, but the way your store is set up and the way your reducer is set up are usually the same.
Right. So you see, when I copy in the app reducer, there's one more extra thing about combined reducers that if you turn a different object, a different type, so let's explore it a little bit. So app reducer, combined reducer take a hash of the name. So I have nav reducer. So maybe I call this my upcase reducer. So when you explore to do your work, I'm not sure about the order thing. That's what I'm also curious about. There's one more thing is the when you call with app reducer, combine reducer, return a type. Can I get? Oh, how do I import this combine reducer? It must be somewhere. It's. Is it down here or up there? Combine reducer. So it's in React Redux and.
Wrong. It's another one.
Huh?
No, it's in Redux.
Are you sure?
Because you got a red screen.
No, but that's because I use it. Oh, let's see if this actually can find it. Combine reducer. Oh, wait, let's see the type. Combine reducer. God, I can't see the type then. It's a function, but okay, there may be a different way that combine reducers are returned. So I now have a reducer that handling both. I think will be successful. This is a tricky part where you see the initial state for each screen. You get that screen like for the action. So this is the part that I find it a little confusing. But other than that, when you connecting to you create the store here, everything we've done so far is.
So this is a little confusing too, like nav, state.nav. Like,
where?
So I think, so map state to props also state nav, state.nav.
Yeah.
Nav, the reducer. So this is hard to explain. But
So
in the nav reducer, the nav reducer itself doesn't know what it's called. So in here, so here you're defining under this name nav reducer. Another reason why you want to organize your logic, so you don't want when you type an auth reducer, type this store auth, this store object every time. So actually this reducer can usually only access things in store.net, state.net. So you don't pass the whole all the state into nav reducer. So this way, this reducer, your nav reducer, doesn't change object state of other things. That makes sense.
the reducer doesn't change.
So here you're returning a state, but this is not your whole state. This is only state.net.
Right. So some reducer you only change. You only have the partial state, right?
You combine reducers. So
This is a state only within the reducer itself, right? So each reducer has its own initial state, and then the store has an initial state as well.
That's the judge right here. You could pass everything. You could pass in state, but usually you just pass in state.
Right. So technically, my app reducer now I don't have to pass in the state. If I combine different ones, but if it's my only reducer, then I need to pass it.
Yeah, but you could probably have other stuff here.
Correct. So in your work, most of the time you probably write something like this, and then you have more if statement here, and you can use the case switch statement. Okay. This is the slightly messed up scenario where we're not prepared to explain super well on the Redux integration.
One reason why this is complicated though is because remember that what we said is there's one object that controls all your object state. That's also for your navigation. So we have this object that's called your store. You can hydrate or load that object in any screen and you navigate to the right screen, which is actually kind of complicated. All the right data filled in. But this is really useful, so managing deep linking. So if someone passes you a link that you click on, you can just put it in exactly the right screen with all the right information. Or you close and open the app, you open the same spot. You can go back and forth easily. But that requires you to keep really complex data about app objects and make sure you don't lose it. Which is why all this weird.
This is the advantage compared to, let's say, iOS. If you go into the chat screen and you might have to go to create a navigation controller, inside you have to show another screen. You actually have to create a parent screen and then create the screen inside it. But this one you just pass the props.
You use iOS, like in the web, you have the URL, it's like slash user slash 5, and you know exactly what to show. In iOS or Android, you usually don't have that. But yeah, you just can't have that.
Alrighty then. We'll see you on Wednesday for lab.
We'll probably explain this again, so don't worry if you don't get everything yet. We'll keep
Right.
having this in. Like Claudia said, it takes at least 10 times, probably too.
It takes 10 times, but hope that.
And over time, another thing too is I think right now it seems very complicated, and hopefully, as you have more experience building apps, you'll start running into some problems that are solved by this approach. So next time you have a button that's trying to update the text field, you'll be like, how do I do this? And you'll see why Redux would want. It'll take time.
And if you run into any problems, right? Again, please use Slack. Ask anytime. If you stuck for half an hour, that's a bit too much. Don't get trapped in many hours. We're happy to pull the code and troubleshoot. And even though, you see, I don't know anything, but in class, we work through things together by understanding what is the input and what it returns. Right? When you use that with dispatch and connect, you'll be able to slowly understand it, but you start by understanding the signature. Right? The function takes this and return that. It's a function of function. We'll get there. Thanks, guys.